All right, Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
I'm so ready for rapid fire
All right,
at this point. Yes.
here we go. Scale of 1 to 10. How do you rate Riley Leonard's social media goodbye tribute that he posted to Notre Dame?
Unique. I thought it was cool. Like, number one, I'm just kind of over the graphic with the words and the, Notre Dame will always be in my heart. All that
Just
stuff.
like
And
the written out thing,
yeah, they're
like the
written
letter.
out with like
Yeah.
the action shot of it, what, like, okay, that's kind of played out.
This was like his live love letter
Yeah.
to the Notre
I
Dame
like the
world.
live love letter. First of all, I don't like
Yeah.
to read. So I don't ever read those anyway. So
Never would have guessed that.
So I really enjoyed the kind of cartoonish, and it wasn't all about him either. Like, Marcus Freeman was in there and Jeremiah Love was in there. And, it was about the team. And that's kind of the way he took it. He's like, this team changed Notre Dame. And I thought that was a really good message. And I thought it was a good message to Notre Dame in general.
Yeah.
And it was good. I thought it was really cool. I thought it was really cool.
It was. Like he says, you gave me everything you had. I gave you everything you had. And, I'll admit, I got a little misty there. It's like, yeah, you did. You did give everything that you had. I totally agree with that. He says one season wasn't enough and it's always been the Irish. And I mean, there was just a lot of really good stuff in there. I got like something going on with my arm here. Sorry.
It's a tattoo. I don't know.
A lot of really good stuff in there. I was wondering like who did, because it's like animated.
Yeah.
I don't know what exactly what you call that animation. I was wondering who did the animation for him. And there's some sound effects in there and crowds cheering and a little bit of the play-by-play. And it was like it was well done.
It was
well done. I don't know if he had Fighting Irish Media do that for him or like him and a friend did that on their computer in their apartment. Or
I noticed he had like a logo at the end there, like a Riley Leonard logo. I wonder if that's going to be his logo moving forward. But no, I thought it was really cool. I thought it was tasteful, it was well done, and it was so on brand for him. You know what I mean? It was just Riley Leonard. Like that's who he is. Would expect nothing less. But it was really good.
Okay, so before we get into the Notre Dame women's basketball, DK says, can we address the elephant in the room? Every time Sean misses an IB podcast, the ladies lose a game. I hadn't really.
I mean, that's not true. You have had to miss game. You've missed shows during the 19-game win streak.
I thought so as well.
Yeah,
because that's a good point. Because I was at a very minimum, I was traveling.
Or you were
on a Wednesday.
On a Thursday, you had games.
Yeah.
So
wrong again, DK.
Just another notch on the wall.
So fill in the blank. Notre Dame women's basketball losing to Duke in the ACC tournament semifinals is blank.
It's disappointing. That's the best thing I could come on. It was disappointing. It was, Duke's a tough team. They're a very, very good team. Who ended up winning yesterday?
Duke.
Was
Duke
it Duke?
Beat NC State. They won the whole thing.
So, you got beat by the champ that, of that tournament, right? I mean, and give Duke credit. They had to go through both teams that won the regular season championship. So, Notre Dame just hasn't had their stuff the last couple of weeks, it feels like. And so it was disappointing. I was hoping they were going to be able to turn it on for the ACC championship because they struggled the game before, but they won. And then they were struggling in this one, and they just couldn't get over the hump.
Yeah.
So it's disappointing.
For sure. And it completely ends their chances to be a number one seed in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
And, based on the fact that Duke did beat NC State to win the ACC tournament, they might even be, battling with them now for who's going to be a 2 seed, who's going to be a 3 seed. And now, to me, there's a lot less difference between being a 2 and a 3 as opposed to being a 1 or a 2 seed.
Agreed.
In terms of what your path looks like.
Yep.
It's kind of like more pride than anything, whether you're a 2 or a 3 seed. But like to be in contention basically all year long, to be a 1, like if it did end up being a 3, it would obviously be very disappointing. Maybe it serves as a motivator as well if that happens. I don't know. But
you had to sit on it for a week though, too.
Yeah, I know.
You got to sit in that. That stinks.
I know. I know people are upset and frustrated. I saw our boards over the weekend, and I deliberately, didn't respond to any of it, to sort of, leave the emotion behind. And I thought it would just be better, to address it here. But a few different things on some of the stuff that I did see, like I've seen the Niele Ivey can't coach, whole thing. We're going through that again, which is total BS. I mean, if you're saying that now, I'm guessing you were probably saying it in February last year when they lost to NC State at home, and then, went on to, before they went on to a 10-game winning streak that took them to the Sweet 16, which included winning an ACC championship. I mean, every time you get a little bit of struggle, it's like, oh, coach can't coach now. And, it's like going through this, that she's pushed plenty of buttons in the right way over the course of the season. And, like you're just being very overly emotional about a couple of losses to a couple of good teams because, whether, were they ranked below Notre Dame? Yeah, because Notre Dame has been ranked high all year, but these are still ranked teams that they've lost to. It's not like they've lost to, a bunch of unranked teams that had no business being on the same court with them, and Duke, as we said, did go on to win the ACC. And, the other part of the, like, if you're going to critique coaching is, you have to remember that in college, recruiting is part of coaching, and she is an elite recruiter. So you do have to factor that in there.
100%. Yeah.
I've seen, that Ivy has killed Leah Two King, and, all of a sudden, Leah Two King's game is gone. She's 3 games removed from having 3 straight double-doubles, and she's still averaging a double-double. She had a couple off games. King is fine.
Yeah, look, they're going to need her. They're going to need her in the AC or in the tournament, right? There's no doubt about it. And just like they're going to need Hannah, and just like they're going to need Olivia, and just like they're going to need Sony, and they had off games at times. You know what I mean? And when I turned the game on and they had, Leah 2 had, I think, 0 points. And I was like, wow, like that's surprising because that hasn't been who she's been all year long.
Right.
Like you don't just turn off the switch and you're like, oh, I'm done. I hit my max. Like I'm over.
Notable. I think it has to be a Duke thing. One, she sat for quite a bit of the fourth quarter, but 2, even in the win over Duke the first time, she had 1 point in that game. So in 2 games against Duke, she had 1 point this year. They went 1-1 in those games. So I've also seen, like after all this, there's no way that, like King and, watching King and Carlin, no transfer would want to come in. And it's like, come on, really?
Like, seriously?
They're both great team players who are fully invested in trying to help this team win a national championship. And that's still the ultimate goal. That is still out there in front of them. That's why they came here, though,
Right.
And then the other one, there's a lot of talk about, is this fatigue? Have the starters played too many minutes and all this kind of stuff? Hidalgo's playing about the same minutes that she played last year. She's obviously averaging more points. Westbeld and Citron's minutes are down compared to last year. Leah Two King's minutes, she's playing about 5 minutes less compared to what she played at Pittsburgh last year. Cass Prosper's minutes are about the same. So, like, nobody's minutes are up. If, like, a couple players, Hidalgo and Prosper, are about the same. Everybody else's minutes are down compared to last year. So, I don't think that is a thing. It's just, again, you're going through a rough patch at the wrong time of year.
Absolutely.
So everything just seems that much more amplified. Now. Well, I'm not trying to tell you everything's fine and dandy. They've obviously got to get some things figured out, but I do still think that they can. It's not the end of the world. I do still think that they can get it going again. So, Niele Ivey pointed to their defense and inability to turn stops into fast break opportunities as their biggest problem specific to the Duke game. Do you buy or sell that as the biggest issue that you see?
I think that's part of it. Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think that is probably one of the bigger deals because I think, throughout the season, their transition defense to offense has been one of the bright points, right? When they're running coast to coast and, they can do the scan the floor and make those passes and all of those different things that, Olivia and Hannah are so good at, right? Running the floor, being active at the rim, making layups. All of those things were things that made them as good as they are. Their defense is what it was one of their calling cards. It just was. I don't know that this team is as good in the half court as they are when they're in transition. And I'm not saying they're bad in the half court, but I think when they're moving, when they're rolling, I think it's the defense into offense that makes them go.
For sure. But I still think it was more about like this specific opponent. Now, some of the things that we saw against Duke have been recurring in the other two losses as well. But Duke is so defensive minded that it's almost like its own thing, because Notre Dame still had 12 fast break points, which isn't horrible. It's not, like I think probably around 17, 18 or something like that is, probably been, kind of like an average. But again, you're playing a ranked team and a team that, ended up winning the whole thing. But, starting, with the NC State game, every team has been much more deliberate with their own offense to try to prevent that from happening, and they've also tried to drive to the basket more, so like
that's a major problem. By the way.
And that's so if you go specifically to the Duke game, Duke had 21 turnovers. Notre Dame turned them into 27 points. Again, solid, because like if you're going to maximize, like if every turnover turned into the most points you could get, it'd be like 3-pointers every time. So like 63, right. We know that's completely unrealistic. It's not like you're going to go down and, make a 21 3-pointers, after every turnovers, but 27 points off turnovers is still a solid number. And then defensively, this was the thing. This was more the thing to me, again, like specific to Duke. Notre Dame played a lot more zone because they were trying to take away those drives to the basket, because they knew that Duke was going to try to do that. And they had some success, but where it bit Notre Dame, I think, was they got out rebounded 38-26. And, again, that's a downside to playing zone, because your players are spaced out on the floor more, and you're not as close to, when the ball comes off the rim and the backboard and that kind of thing. So Duke grabs 12 offensive rebounds and scores 14 second chance points. Like, to me, that was maybe, like the factor of the game, when you look at that. But again, they had to do that, and they were kind of going in and out of the zone a little bit to try to cut off Duke, prevent Duke from getting those drives to the basket, because we knew that they were going to want to do that anyway. And again, like based on where, teams have had success during this stretch, that's been the one thing that's kind of jumped out. But those were all factors to me. But, like back to Notre Dame's offense, because I did want to, like, there's a bigger kind of thing, because I think you nailed it with the half court. Like, Notre Dame would definitely rather be getting out in transition, grabbing rebounds and getting out and running if they can. But again, teams are going to try to hold the ball more and try to keep Notre Dame from running as much as possible. And that's going to happen even more in the tournament. Like, you see teams, get more deliberate. Like, typically the teams with the better guards are going to win. And, like that should favor Notre Dame, like, again, it's going to come down to specific matchups. But my observation with Notre Dame's half-court offense, because that is where the bigger struggles have been. Maddie Westbeld is a stretch 4, and she can also play small forward. Well, small forward is where Sonia Citron is playing right now, because you have obviously Miles and Hidalgo, and then you've got Citron, with the 6'1" frame. She's playing the small forward. Westbeld, again, stretch 4. But Leah Tu King is a true power forward, which obviously, is a 4. And she's great there, averaging the double-double, like I talked about. But she's also only 6 foot tall. So Westbeld is 6'3". So you've got Westbeld playing out of position, playing the 5 right now, after she's basically been playing stretch 4 and some small forward over, the last 4 years. And in the meantime, you've obviously got Kate Koval, who's a true 5 coming off the bench with her 6'5" frame. So, like, for the most part, it didn't matter. I don't think that Westbeld was playing out of position when they were running those, like unranked type teams into the ground. you know, the lower ranked teams on the schedule. But I think against some of these other teams, again, I think it has been a bigger factor when they've been forced to try, you know, to have to run that half court offense more. And I'm not like blaming her for it. I'm just saying, like, she is better suited to be able to play that stretch 4 rather than 5. And I think that her being in that, you know, that's so much her game, where she can get out there on the wing consistently and, you know, like hit threes and, you know, some mid-range and those different things. And, you know, like we've obviously also seen her get, you know, like her nose getting, you know, banged these last few, she's had bloody noses the last few games. But, you know, it just feels to me like as these better teams have tried to force Notre Dame to play more deliberately, it seems like that's part of why the offense has stagnated, you know, because she's such a big part when she's in that 4 position of the ball movement and keeping the ball moving. And, you know, like also knowing where everybody else is supposed to be. She's always been such a huge part of that. So like, again, it's just my observation that it seems like with her being in that 5, it has been a factor in those half court sets with why the ball stops moving sometimes.
Do you think that it should be kind of an either or with Leah King or Maddie Westball on the floor?
I don't know. That's what, like, I've gone back and forth with like who exactly it should be.
Yeah.
I don't know. And obviously King is such a rebounding presence.
Sure.
And, you know, her ability, you know, like all those little things that she does, diving for loose balls and all those different things as well. It's like, and I think that that's part of the conundrum that they find themselves in right now. But it's also, you know, fair to say, well, you beat UConn in Texas when Kate Koval was still in the starting lineup, you know, and she's come in these last few games and given them, even though she's not, you know, she hasn't been like a huge scoring presence, she has been a big defensive presence inside as well. And I think that maybe that's kind of some of the pieces that they've got to, you know, sort of figure out now to get this thing clicking once again.
Yeah. They gotta figure something out, right? I mean, something has to, you know, get them juiced up and get them going again. We know this team has the talent to do it, right? We've seen it a million times this season. They've got the talent to do it, but they just need to get everybody moving in the right direction and get everybody get on board here, because, you know, another loss that they're not supposed to have, then the season's over, you know, at this point. So, you know, I'm obviously speaking the obvious here, but, you know, I hope they can get it figured out. With a couple of home games here coming up, you know, let's start getting the train rolling here.
Let's shift to men's basketball. Fill in the blank. Notre Dame men winning a 4 overtime game over Cal on Saturday is blank.
It was... What's a great way to say this? It was exhilarating to cheer for this team again, is the best way I can say it, because, you know, I've been to a bunch of men's games this year, and they're just not that fun to watch, to be perfectly honest with you. It's like they invent ways to lose, and as you know, we're driving home from a track meet at Purdue on Saturday, actually, and we're watching the game while we're at our meal before we hit the road, and fully anticipating the game would be over by the time we got on the road, right? And so we're driving for all 4 overtimes, and I've got the phone up on the dash, and we're watching the game, and it's me and my father-in-law and my son, and we're like fired. Like, it got us almost halfway home. You know, we're watching this game. You know what I mean? Like, it was fantastic. And we're, you know, every time, you know, Burton hits a 3 or Alako hits a big shot, it's like, okay, let's go. You know, like, it was enthralling. It was actually fun to watch. Like, that team was fun to watch in that moment. And I'm just hoping it's shades of the future for this team, you know, not this year, but next, obviously. But
but like,
man,
you talk about a good way to end the regular season on that kind of high. Like, and that's what, you know, you're sitting there. It's like, man, they really need to pull this out. Like, they really just need to pull this out to have some kind of good feeling. And then 4 overtimes later, and it's just like Marcus Burton ended up with 43 points, and he got ACC Player of the Week.
I would think so.
Week.
Yeah,
and 21 of his points, so almost half of his points come in the 4 overtime periods.
Yes,
before he fouled out.
And he got I watched him play in high school, and he got that look in his face, like in the overtime period. It was just like that no one's gonna F with me look is the look that he got. And when he would get that in high school, he would just take the game over and it was done. You know what I mean? Obviously, that's a little harder to do, in major college basketball, but that's kind of what happened. Like he had that look and he was just chucking, and it was like these shots are going in. Like that's what's happening. And now when he fouled out, I was like, well, this game's over. But that was not the case. Matalock to the rescue, and they end up winning the game. Yeah. But it was an enjoyable watch, and they did it without Kebajai because he was injured, with a concussion. Tay Davis fouled out in regulation. So, I mean, they did it without some of their normal pieces too. And I think that made it even more impressive. And of course, Burton being out at the end of the 4th overtime. So it was a fun game to watch. It was a really fun game to watch.
Burton's points, the most since Adrian Dantley had 49 points in 1975.
That's crazy.
Amazing.
And the most any player has scored in an ACC game this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cooper Flagg had 42.
How about that? How about that though for a memorable senior night? It's like no one's going to remember or no one's going to forget that senior night.
Well, and it's funny because we still talk about the 5 overtime game against Louisville, right?
Right.
It's kind of that magical 2015 season.
Right.
Obviously, this season was not magical by any stretch of the imagination, but this is something I can take away from this season and remember for a long time. You know what I mean? So
that's been 10 years ago now too.
I know. Not I remember that 5 overtime game like it was yesterday.
I know.
So that probably just means I'm old.
My boy Bobby Hensley and I were sitting there courtside on the baseline.
Yeah.
There, and I'm like, go get me another Diet Coke, boy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's probably why he started hating you right there. That was the moment.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I literally remember when Jaron Grant started hitting those buckets in the last, 30 seconds or whatever it was. I'm like, I turned to Bobby and I was like, well, at least he's making it a little bit exciting because it was not a very fun game up until that point. But everything that started in that last minute with Jaron Grant going nuts, and then obviously the 5 overtimes was just like, never forget that.
Exactly. Yep. That's awesome.
Fill in the blank. NC State firing men's basketball coach Kevin Keatts a year after he led the Wolfpack to an ACC tournament title, and the Final Four is blank.
It's criminal. Unless there's something that I don't know, because I don't follow NC State basketball, unless there's something going on behind the scenes, like he's doing stuff he's not supposed to do.
The only thing I know that I've heard was he was on the verge of getting fired last year before the improbable run.
I see. You think that would buy him more than a year, though?
You would think so, because he wins the ACC tournament. Obviously, they gets him to the Final Four,
right?
But then they extended him 2 years. They gave him a 2-year contract extension, so now they owe him $7.5 million.
Okay, see, dude, just let him. Let him go.
Doesn't make sense.
Is there's got to be a relationship clash in there somewhere? You know what I mean? Whether it's with the AD, the president, the women's basketball coach. I don't know. There's got to be a clash in there someplace, because you don't just fire a coach who just went to the Final Four and that you extended. So there's got to be something else there. If it's just basketball related, that's criminal. That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
When he put out, you were talking about when we were talking about Riley Leonard and his goodbye, he tweeted the letter, the goodbye letter. And
so it wasn't a video, so I'm not interested.
No video. Yeah, you had to read it. So he thanked the former AD, the AD who hired him, Debbie Yao, the AD before the current one.
She was the coach, Oregon. Wasn't she?
Well, there's a lot of different Yaos.
Oh, okay.
Debbie Yao, there's Kay Yao.
Kay, that's what I was thinking of. Okay.
Yeah. There is, I believe it is Sue Yao. My sister actually played for the third Yao at Kansas State for a year. But there's no mention of the current AD, Boo Corrigan, or any of the administration. He did mention it was their first ACC championship in 37 years and their first Final Four in 40 years, which seems significant
Again,
if you're NC State, right? Like,
yeah.
But
Again,
I'm like you. Like, I don't know like the ins and outs of everything that's going on at NC State. What we all know is it's Duke, it's North Carolina, and then there's a whole big drop off before anyone thinks about NC State.
in
They're
every
not just
sport.
they're not just they're not just the second fiddle. They're like the 25th fiddle. So, but he also said that the program can thrive when supported to the level necessary to compete, which feels like
there it is.
At the very least an NIL reference, if not, a shot at the current administration to whatever other extent.
It's a shot at the administration for sure. Now, what those details are, what that means, I think remains to be seen, but that's absolutely a shot at the administration. And that's absolutely telling as to maybe a beef that was going on there. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. It has to be more than just what happened on the basketball court. You can't convince me otherwise, because they invested a bunch of money in him after he went to the Final Four. And going to the Final Four and you haven't done it in 40 years, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. Like if Shrewsbury takes this team, not this one, but next year, if he takes that team to the Final Four, he's going to be the Notre Dame head coach for quite some time, if that's the case. I mean,
one would think
the last coach that took him to a Final Four is like, an unlucky penny. He never goes away. He's here forever. So and that was in 1978 or 9 or whatever it was. That was before I was born. And so I got you on that one. That was good.
I wasn't ready for that. Oh, John is obviously just getting here. No, they're not in bad shape.
They're not in bad shape.
They're going through a bad stretch.
They're a top 10 team in the country. They're not in bad shape. So take a breath. Take a breath.
Breathe.
It's okay.
I'm trying to breathe.
Yeah.
Fill in the blank. Duke associate head coach Jai Lucas leaving the Blue Devils to be named Miami Hurricanes new head coach before Duke's season is over is blank.
Unprofessional. I don't like it. Now, maybe the Duke head coach told him to do that. Maybe he said, look, hey man, we're good here. Go do your thing. Be that guy. I don't like it. Like, finish what you started. Like, stick with this team through the tournament. It's not going to change the outcome or the fortunes of next year's Miami team if you're there for another month. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I've got a problem with that. Even if Shire,
I think it's very odd.
Told him,
I've never heard of this in college before.
It's almost like it's almost like when Notre Dame's assistant coaches leave to go become a head coach someplace.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? But it's actually like, hey, I just found you a job, so we're not going to embarrass you by firing you, but it's time to go. But in the middle, it's not the middle of the season, but it's the middle of the most important part of the season. Like,
right?
I don't like it. It smells fishy to me.
It's just very odd. Again, like Stymie says, well, Miami's season is over, so that has to play into the announcement. But
Duke's isn't. Like, okay.
Yeah, Duke's isn't. He's the associate head coach. Like you said, unless his boss said, yeah, go ahead, do it. But it's like I don't understand what you're gaining. Unless you're trying to retain the roster. Like look at
kind of do both though. Like,
because most of this stuff goes up until like the Final Four, and interviews get started at the Final Four, for different jobs and things like that. And it just doesn't seem like it should be that much of a priority for a guy to leave, especially a program that's got Final Four national championship aspirations of their own based on where they are right now. I don't understand what either he or Miami is gaining by doing this right now. It just feels like you would say, finish out your season. As soon as your season's over, come aboard.
And we see it all the time with, guys that get hired, their assistant coaches someplace in football, for example, and they get hired by another school and they finish out their job with the one school, but they're kind of pulling double duty there for a little while. Like, I don't see why that couldn't have been the case. You know what I mean? Why can't you pull double duty and still retain your roster and still, start planning for the future with Miami and yet still coach Duke? I mean, there's not a lot of coaches on a basketball coaching staff. You would think losing your associate head coach going into March
would be pretty important.
Yeah. You would think.
You still have a current employer, even if you're getting an opportunity to be a head coach.
Right.
He's going to be a young head coach, too. He's only 36.
Oh, wow.
So,
I mean, it's a red flag, to be perfectly honest with you, whether it's just as simple as he's just not finishing his job at Duke, or that Duke was like, no, you're good. You can go. You know what I mean? Like, it's a red flag either way.
Well, and I just feel like if you're Miami, like, should Miami put themselves in Duke's shoes and say, like, if they're in that situation in a couple years, would they want their associate head coach to be plucked while they're in the process of a potential, at the very minimal Final Four type run? I mean, Miami was just in the Final Four a couple of years ago.
True.
So they should know what that's like. I agree. It doesn't really sit well with me. I think it's very odd that, that everyone is okay with it.
Yeah.
Eddie George is going from head coach at Tennessee State to Bowling Green. Rate the move on a scale of 1 to 10.
I think it's like a 9. I think it's a step up in the right direction. You're going from 1AA to group of 5. I think that's a great stepping stone. That's the way you want to go. Everybody was talking about Eddie George for like NFL jobs and like, these big, Power 5 jobs. Like, he's not there yet. Let him prove it at another level. And you can go to Bowling Green. You can be very successful at a place like Bowling Green, in the MAC. Like, you can make some waves there. So you kind of proved it at Tennessee State. Time to prove it at the next. Like, this is the natural stepping stone for all. Like, if his name was, Jim Robinson or something like that, this is the natural stepping stone for a 1AA head coach. You know what I mean?
I give it a 9 as well. Yeah, like the ability to make that move. He went 9-3. I think you get that kind of record at the FCS level, essentially a non-traditional, it's obviously not a football power Tennessee State, and he turned them around in a pretty short amount of time. So you get this opportunity, get to the MAC.
He's in Ohio, where his name is gold. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to be able to recruit guys to Bowling Green who know him, as a player.
A lot of name recognition that he's going to have there. Yep.
100%.
Obviously, Urban Meyer started at Bowling Green before he went to Utah and started down his path that took him to Florida and back to Ohio State as well. So, really good move. I guess I didn't know if maybe when Eddie George took that Tennessee State job, like if he really had aspirations to keep climbing, or because he was starting at Tennessee State, like if maybe he thought of himself as a lifer there, that kind of thing. But obviously, I think his name and his profile probably helped, make him a head coach right away. It's not like he had to be an assistant and kind of climb through the ranks to get that.
So. 100%. And, the timing of the Bowling Green situation is very unique because of the way the head coach just left, and so a lot of staffs are intact right now. There's not a lot of movement, you know what I mean? And so, he's obviously leaving Tennessee State in kind of a lurch. But at the same time, this is just an odd timing kind of a situation. I still think it's a good move for him. I think it's a good fit geographically, and it's obviously a step in the right direction if that's what he wants to continue to do. So, just get that much closer to Columbus.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what it does. Man, I got the sunshine coming through my window.
It's scary, isn't it? Like,
I know.
It's actually sun's out.
Crazy. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. In and out.
All right.
I know. Did the teacher ever dismiss class in the other classroom?
Yes.
Let me go look.
Yes, I've already downloaded the audio.
Okay.
So, yep, ready to roll, man.
All right.
Ready to roll.
Well, that's going to do it for tonight then. Have a great night, and we will talk to you tomorrow on Ivy Nation Sports Talk.